Stop for a second and be honest with yourself. How much of what you did today, what you wore, what you said, how you walked into a room, was for you? And how much of it was quietly, invisibly shaped by people you don't even know? If you can't answer that with confidence, this video is exactly where you need to be right now, because here's what nobody tells you. The strangers whose opinions you fear, they are not thinking about you. They never were. And yet, knowing that doesn't stop it. You've heard "stop caring what people think" 1,000 times. You've nodded along. You've probably even believed it for a few hours. And then you walked into a new place, felt every eye in the room, and forgot every word of it. That's not weakness. That's not a character flaw. That is your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is, it was built for a world that no longer exists. Let's go back. Way back. Before cities, before strangers, before the concept of someone you'll never see again. For the vast majority of human history, you lived in a group of roughly 150 people. That was your entire world. Every single person in it knew your name, your family, your reputation. If those people turned on you, if they decided you were a problem, a threat, an outcast, you didn't just feel bad. You died. Rejection wasn't emotional pain. It was a death sentence. Being cast out from your tribe meant no food, no shelter, no protection. Your brain learned one lesson so deeply, it carved it into your biology. What other people think of you is a matter of survival. That lesson never left. Evolution doesn't update on a yearly cycle. Your nervous system is still running ancient software in a modern world, so when a stranger glances at you sideways on the subway, your brain doesn't process it as irrelevant. It processes it as a threat signal. The same system that kept your ancestors alive is now making you rehearse what you should have said in a conversation that ended 4 days ago. Same hardware, wrong era. But here's where it gets deeper, because it's not just evolution. There's a specific psychological mechanism at work, one that researchers have studied extensively. And it has a name. It's called the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is the tendency to believe that other people are paying far more attention to you than they actually are. In study after study, people wildly overestimate how much strangers notice their appearance, their mistakes, their behavior. You spill a drink and feel like the whole room saw it. In reality, 3 people glanced over, immediately returned to their own thoughts, and forgot it happened before you even cleaned it up. Here's why that matters. Your embarrassment, your anxiety, your hyper-awareness, all of it is a response to an audience that doesn't fully exist. You are performing for a crowd that went home. And the tragic part? The mental energy you spend managing that imaginary audience is real. It costs you real confidence, real spontaneity, real moments of your life spent editing yourself for people who will never notice the difference. Now think about what this actually looks like in your daily life. You hesitate before posting something because you imagine how strangers will read it. You change your order at a restaurant because the person behind you seems impatient. You laugh a little too loud or go quiet at exactly the wrong moment, not because of how you feel, but because of how you think it looks. You pick clothes not based on what you like, but based on what you imagine won't invite criticism. You shrink, subtly, constantly, in ways so small and so automatic that you've stopped noticing you're doing it. And the worst part isn't the behavior. The worst part is what it does to your sense of self over time. When you make enough small decisions based on external perception rather than internal truth, you start to lose track of who you actually are. You build an identity around the gap between who you are and who you think strangers need you to be, and that gap becomes exhausting to maintain. Here's the layer most people never reach. The reason you care what strangers think isn't really about the strangers. It's about what their imagined judgment confirms about you. When you walk into a room and feel watched, you're not actually afraid of them. You're afraid of yourself. Afraid that their glance will reveal something you already suspect. That you're not quite enough. Not polished enough. Not confident enough. Not worthy of taking up space. The stranger is just a mirror. And the mirror is showing you your own unresolved relationship with your self-worth. This is why just stop caring doesn't work as advice. It addresses the symptom without touching the root. You can't logic your way out of a feeling that lives below logic. The spotlight effect fades when you stop needing external validation to feel internally stable. Not before. So what actually works? 3 things. And they're simpler than you think, but harder than you want them to be. First, interrupt the assumption. When you catch yourself imagining how a stranger perceives you, ask one question. What evidence do I actually have? Not what you fear, what you can verify. Almost always the answer is none. The story you're telling yourself is fiction. Label it as fiction. Your brain responds to that distinction more than you realize. Second, redirect the spotlight inward. The spotlight effect thrives when your attention is pointed outward. The antidote is grounding yourself in your own experience rather than the imagined experience of observers. What do you think of what you just said? How do you feel in what you're wearing? What do you actually want to order? Practice returning to your own perspective as the primary one. It sounds obvious. It is surprisingly hard. Do it anyway. Third, and this is the one that changes things at the root. Build proof of internal stability. Every time you make a decision based on what you genuinely want instead of what you think looks acceptable, you deposit something into your self-trust. Small decisions compound. The person who stops editing their laugh is not the same person 6 months later. Not because the strangers changed, because they stopped needing them to. The strangers were never the problem. They were never watching as closely as you feared. They were never the judge you cast them as. They were just people, exactly like you, too caught up in their own internal performance to notice yours. The question was never whether they were thinking about you. The question is whether you are going to keep letting the idea of them run your life because you've been shrinking for long enough. And the version of you that stops, that version is worth meeting. If this made you think about something you hadn't considered before, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to understand more about the quiet patterns running your behavior without your permission, stick around. There's a lot more where this came from.